Okay, so our next discussion is a panel where we're going to discuss, can we make campaigns memorable with comedy? That's the question we'll be posing to our next panel. Can we steal the hearts of our minds and of our consumers using humour? So please welcome onto the stage Jayson, CEO and co-founder of the Comedy Crowd, Lynne Parker, founder and CEO of Funny Women, Lorna-Rose, Treen, comedian, writer, and Chalmers onto the stage. A warm welcome, I said. Thank you.
Woo-hoo. Hello. Hello, everybody. Croaky voice, lots of chatting. I'm not one of the mad women that were up a bit earlier. Quick intro. Now, we all remember the funny ads, don't we, on telly? Yeah? Joan Collins and the late, great Leonard Rossiter drinking Censano on a plane. Still a classic. And more recently, the ever-wonderful Joan eating a Snickers bar to quell her inner diva. Comedy is literally used to sell everything from alcohol to chocolate, supermarkets to holidays. And that is because humour is engaging, fun, human, positive, and most of all, memorable. All essential ingredients for a successful marketing campaign. Now, comedy is also a serious business. There are two businesses represented here with a community base of about 30,000 performers, creators, and writers. I founded Funny Women 20 years ago, and along with the Comedy Crowd, we can access all of this brilliant new talent. I indeed run the Funny Women Awards, which this year has had nearly 1,000 women enter. So don't tell me there are no funny women, there are plenty. So the advert is over, and I'm going to be talking now to Chalmers, who's the Digital Marketing Director from Asda and Thomas Cook, double Funny Women Award winner, Lorna-Rose Treen, and Jayson, the founder and CEO of the Comedy Crowd, who have a little pitch over there to the left of the stage. You can go and chat to him afterwards. So, on with our questions. I'm going to sit for this. So, Chris, start with you. Tell us how you have used humour in your campaigns over the years.
No problem. It's fair to say it's quite a pleasure to come and talk about how you can use comedy in advertising today. I have some experience. I've got to say I've never been successful in getting a comedy ad into broadcast, but actually where we've had real success is across, in large part, social video content. So my time at Asda, we had the core objective about trying to engage our social communities more, and we felt a route into that was by using humour. So one of the things that we did, I'm a massive fan of the T-Mobile ad. I don't know if you remember the social ad of the parody of the Kate and Will's wedding, as they all danced down the aisle together with various royalists and lookalikes. It landed incredibly well, and we wanted to do something similar at Asda. So actually, when it was the Queen's 90th birthday, we made a parody ad where we took a lookalike of Will's and Kate, had them shopping in an Asda store, buying some of the product memorabilia that Asda was selling, which was a range of big gnomes, from a corgi to the Queen herself. It was hugely successful in terms of landing across social platforms and drove a huge level of engagement and reach. Off the back of that, we then tried it again. But actually what we learned was you've got to really have a reason to explore humour as a tactic. If you imagine the Queen's birthday, she was 90, it was part of popular culture, there was a real reason, and we had some great fun product to celebrate through comic tactics. Actually, but then we tried to repeat it with Asda's summer barbecue range, which same sort of principle of lookalike is having a great barbecue. Will's and Harry lookalikes fell flat as a pancake. We had no right really to play in that space. We took that tactic on further with our commercial teams. We did executions for our new cheese range. We did executions for our new wine range. We wrote quite long-form content with quite a funny narrative, but in truth, it was too long. So then my experience at Thomas Cook, taking the same tactic, was we did some parody advertising when Thompson rebranded to TUI. We remade their ad and served that through our social platforms. Had a huge amount of engagement because we were joining the conversation in a really humorous way that created quite a big conversation between the two brands and the colleagues that worked for those brands. From there, we took Harry and Meghan lookalike to one of our hotels in Mallorca. We shot some parody content with them having their honeymoon in one of the Thomas Cook hotels. We served that through our social platforms, had a huge level of engagement, and backed it with media spend to have real impact. And the objective at Thomas Cook was really trying to drive brand reappraisal. We'd become quite tired. We had to find a new way in, and comedy and humour was a tactic that really worked well for us. And then part success into broadcast is we partnered with Channel 4, made a docu-series called The Secret Lives of a 5-year-old on holiday. We took a group of kids on holiday to Cyprus. We filmed it. We had great branding from a Thomas Cook perspective, but just the natural editorial and the natural humour of kids and the comments that they made was hugely successful in terms of driving engagement. I then took the tactic to my studio where I was last year and over a number of years. Slightly harder. My ambition was really to get a comic ad broadcast with a great campaign idea. We never landed one. It's so hard. Studio had a right to play. We wanted to drive awareness for the brand. We were a value retailer, a challenger brand, had all those kind of things that should mean humour is important. Never really managed to land on the right tactic, but we had great success again socially. Remaking the milk ad of the 80s, featuring Accrington Stanley, where Studio's based. We were the football sponsors. We remade the ad and we featured Ian Rush with a quip at the end, which was a one-line of comedy, which again had great resonance with the audience and great impact in terms of engagement.
That's an amazing anthology there of comedy.
That's right.
And fantastic. John, why do brands come to you to use humour?
We see a variety of different brands coming to us. It's not really like one type, and typically it's because they want their customers to know, like, and trust them. And that's where I think humour is something uniquely powerful, because, as you mentioned at the start, so it's obviously it's memorable. It helps people to know you, get to know you, but also really like your brand, like you as a personality. And if you can be a bit self-aware, it shows self-awareness and confidence, which it establishes trust as well. We've often seen brands who want to show their human side. So you might think like typically brands use humour would be like maybe confectionery brands or certain brands who like alcohol brands, gambling, who want to kind of be a bit more, I don't know, fun, laddish type of thing sometimes. But we've worked with brands who, for example, do very typically what they say is quite dry stuff. So we did a campaign with a brand who do Salesforce software testing. But we did something around coming out of the pandemic. We did something around homing from work rather than working from home, where all families went and had to live in the office, which was like a twist on kind of their innovation, which worked really well. It massively drove engagement for them. And also it kind of helped with employees, because they then brought in a new head of marketing off the back of seeing this company's quite fun and actually has a sense of humour. So I would say it's showing that human side, showing you've got a sense of humour, really like engaging with people, because ultimately everyone enjoys laughing. It's a very human trait.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Well, I have been told by people that they don't like laughing. So don't know if there's any in the audience, but fantastic. And I have to say, as Funny Women, I have worked with many brands over 20 years, and I think it's an amazing thing to have a brand partnership. And humour is something that engages an audience in a very different way, whether you use it. I mean, we talked to someone earlier about experiential marketing, when you can put on comedy and engage your client audience using it. Lorna, you're on the front line here as a comedian and a writer and a creator. I'm very proud to have Lorna here, because she won 2 awards in our annual, now global, Funny Women Awards. And you won the Stage Award and the Comedy Shorts Award. Yeah. And the a really nice thing about Lorna's performance, a lot of people in the audience didn't realise that she was the same person on stage as she was in her film. So the power of character. So tell us a bit about your experiences with branded content, because I know you've done a bit.
Yeah, so in a acting sense, I've done some ads, and I've also been asked to make some ads on TikTok and Instagram for brands. And I think they approached me on Instagram because I did a series of videos, particularly that was like nostalgic about the noughties, which I think is the area that like maybe is coming up now. Like we've done the 90s, we're moving into the noughties. And I had some videos of me reminiscing about that time. It's just really fun. I think it's a really fun, creative way of pushing you as a writer, and also the brand thinking a bit differently. And it really helps to shift the stuff because people associate it with a personality and attach it to, like an individual.
I mean, the stuff you did, your parodies of Liz Truss, were absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, that wasn't branded, unfortunately.
Shame. I thought you brought the downfall of the Conservative Party.
I think I helped a bit.
I think you might have done, yes. Question to you and Chris and John. Risks and challenges. Because comedy can be a risky strategy, not gonna lie. But if you take that plunge, you do actually often make something that no one ever forgets. I always think of Maureen Lipman and BT. I mean, I am old, by the way, so I'm remembering very old ads. But, what are the risks, John?
I would say there's two types of risks, really. When people do, you say people do refer to comedy as being risky sometimes, and I think that would break down into either offending people and making people annoyed, upset, or like just trying to do a joke that just doesn't land, and then people think that's not great. So I think looking at those two things, I think the first one, if you really know your audience and you understand your audience, and that can really makes a difference. And I think that if you don't try and make someone the butt of the joke, so I think looking about relatable topics is really important and something that a lot of people can relate to. Also, if you can make the brand itself almost not like self-deprecating way, so kind of actually like show that you have self-awareness, that really helps with that. And then making it in terms of like it falling flat, I think what we do is we actually generate ideas from a wide crowd of creators. I think between us and yourselves, as you say, we've got access to a huge pool of talent, and by doing that, you actually get the right idea and the right talent for that particular brand and that moment, rather than hoping that one person has the right idea. And that really helps to actually make sure that you get something that resonates and lands.
I just want to say something, because I've been talking to people here today, and the opportunity for you guys as marketeers is to work with somebody new as well, who might be really big sign up Lorna now. She's going to be big in 2 years' time? What do you reckon?
Couple of months.
There we are. Bravado. But, get the talent when it's fresh and it's new, and get them associated with your brand. And between us, we have literally thousands of them. Chris, risks, challenges?
I think it's very similar to what John described. I think you've got to have the right to play in this space.
Yeah.
So your brand, you've got to have the right brand, the personality or the brand objectives, where humour is a really powerful tactic. And that's often sort of challenger brands tend to get associated with this type of tactic. Or you've got to have the right product. So in the Asda example I shared was we had really some fun products that deserve to be celebrated through comedy in many ways. So I think that's been really mindful. And then I think when you execute, the truth is, humour and comedy can be quite polarising.
Yes.
And actually, if your audience is quite diverse by virtue of your offer, it's hard to land something that's universally liked. So it's really challenging, actually. Which is why then when you land it, and I've often landed it in social platforms, you can really get a quick reaction on the sentiment, which I think then actually is part of the risk mitigation. So what we've often done is when we've landed the content socially, we've actually crafted sort of a bank of responses. We've tried to interrogate how people might react, what they might say, and build sort of stock responses that allows us to have that conversation in an open environment to kind of diffuse any bad reaction. But the truth is, it is a risky tactic in some ways, and the organisations that you work for and the teams that you work for have to have an element of bravery.
But that's why you work with people like us, because
Absolutely.
We get a brief and we mitigate the risk.
Absolutely.
It's really important. And I would say that there are lots of different types of comedy. Just like you would use different types of music as sound bed for your campaigns and whatever, comedy is exactly the same. Lorna, how do you get it doesn't matter whether it's a campaign, but how do you get the most impact out of something you make as a video?
Oh,
Other than just being hilariously funny, of course.
I think you've really got, and for something to cut through on social media, you've really got to make it clear. I think that's the main thing that people fall down on, creators, also like marketers on social media as well. Something might not pop off if it's just not clear. People have a really short attention span, so if they don't immediately get it or immediately think something, then they just move on because they don't have the time.
Yeah.
We're so busy.
It's a very impatient space, isn't it?
Really impatient. And I do a lot of parodies, and I quite often I do something that makes people think that it's real. So they go, what? And then they're like hooked into something, and then they're laughing, and they're like, oh, I didn't expect to like laugh at this.
Yeah.
So being clever in that way, doing something a little bit differently. Also like bright colours, as basic as that, and really well lit. That's another thing. If something's too visually dark, you just push past it.
Yeah. And a lot of your content you do on your own, on your phone.
Yeah, in my room. Yeah, yeah, in my bedroom.
I don't know how much longer we've got, but I think we'll start the roundup, because I'd like to ask you all about your favourite funny ad. So, Chris, what's your favourite all-time?
2 minutes to choose, really. But I've got to say, there's a few, but the one that I absolutely love, and I think Specsavers are a great
I love
advertiser, and
Specsavers.
some of their excuses are brilliant.
Sponsor funny women, please, Specsavers.
Love
them.
My favourite
Glasses
in their sort of back catalogue of comic ads
Yeah.
is where the cat bounces, and then it's the actual guy who's fitted the door has fitted it upside down, and the cat flaps at the top.
Oh, yes.
And the cat's bouncing.
I like the
That's
one
great.
of the old people on the merry-go-round. That is really funny. John?
Yeah, absolutely loads, like you said, that could pick. I think one that I saw again recently was do you remember the Lotto campaign where it said, please don't let it be them? James Blunt did one, and he was really surprisingly good comedy actor.
Yes.
So worth checking that out again if you missed it at the time. That was a really funny one.
Yeah. Lorna?
I've got two.
That's
that I can't
fine.
choose between.
You're allowed.
They're both ones from my childhood, but one of them is the James Corden tango ads, where they used to just bully James Corden. They're really funny, and it was like people dressed fully in orange would like come into James Corden's room.
Bonkers.
Yeah, it was absolutely bonkers.
Yeah.
There's a whole series of them, and it's worth going back on YouTube. And then the other one was the Talk to Frank advert, where there was a dog. Do you remember this? David Mitchell voiced a dog that had been like a drug mule. It was really, really funny, but also like really got the effective message across.
Yeah.
I just thought it was perfectly written.
That's a really good example also where comedy can cut through on an issue. You know, a lot of people will use comedy to talk about social issues and charities and what have you. I have no idea if we are out of time. We've got 2 minutes. Okay. Got to think of something else to say. John, tell us a bit more about why you're here and the comedy crowd, and why they should come and talk to you over in your lovely...
Well, we've got loads of free pick and mix, so that's one reason to come and talk to us.
Yeah.
We're here because it's a brilliant fun festival, and to meet like brands and agencies who are interested in using humour. We've talked about some of the reasons why today, like, you know, to be memorable, to cut through, and to make people, you know, to show the human side of your brand. So we can discuss ways in which that we can do that. There's also lots of different types of ways you can use humour. So I think we've talked a lot about video content, but you can put on events,
live events,
short text-based content like little snippets. I was talking to someone earlier about using humour in alt text on images, which I thought was a really interesting idea and concept. Like there's loads of different ways you can layer it into what you're doing and be part of your voice.
And your comedy crowd on all socials, yeah?
Yes.
And we're Funny Women on all socials, so do check us out. And I'm going to hang around with John and the guys for a bit, so come and talk to us. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks, Lorna. Thanks, Chris.
Round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing about how we utilise comedy in our campaign building. So thank you.